4th, 2020 Board of Selectmen. Just a quick note, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, section 30A, paragraph, I think it's paragraph 18, and the governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Town of Chelmsford Board of Selectmen will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for more remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found at the town's website at www.chelmsfordma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so by accessing Chelmsford telemedia website, www.chelmsfordtv.org. No in-person attendance of the members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the town's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive recording of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. So everybody can see my screen, right? That's shared?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so we'll start off with approving some meeting minutes.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the regular session minutes for January 20th, 2020.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Ken, this is the one that you were not at because it was with Attorney Harrington.
Oh, got it. Sorry about that.
So I'll make a motion that we approve but not release the executive session meeting minutes for January 20th, 2020.
I'll second.
Aye.
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 Ken, it's the same one. You were not
Yeah.
there.
Well, yep,
You're
yep.
abstaining, Ken.
I don't have the minutes open in front of me because it'll share all of it. So
Okay, well, I'll forewarn you then going forward.
Yep.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve but not release the executive session meeting minutes for January 27th, parts 1, 2, and 3.
I'll second.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Make a motion that we approve the executive session meeting minutes for February 10th, 2020,
But not release.
but not released. Yep, sorry, yep.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Make a motion that we approve the regular session meeting minutes for February 25th, 2020.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Make a motion that we approve but not release the executive session meeting minutes for February 25th, 2020.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That's executive. Yep. Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
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 Make a motion that we approve the regular session meeting minutes for March 5th, 2020.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Make a motion that we approve but not release the executive session meeting minutes for March 5th for part 1. I'm doing this one separately because Ken, you were not in that part of the meeting.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 And I abstain.
Make a motion that we approve but not release the executive session meeting minutes for March 5th, 2020, parts 2 and 3.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Make a motion that we approve the regular session meeting minutes for March 9th, 2020, and George, you were not in attendance at this one.
Okay.
I'll second.
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 I'll make a motion that we approve the regular session meeting minutes for March 27th, 2020.
I'll second.
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Make a motion that we approve the regular session meeting minutes for April 9th, 2020.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Make a motion that we approve the regular session meeting minutes for April 21st, 2020.
I'll second.
We have motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 And I'll make a motion that we approve but not release the executive session meeting minutes for April 21st, 2020.
I'll second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that's all the meeting minutes, right?
Yes.
All right. So John, well, we had one request that would it be easier if we took out of order the school piece, just so we could get, I was going to see if we could move Jay off the phone quicker, free up his night. John, do you think yours is going to be a little bit longer?
Yeah, I should be about 5 minutes or so, but that's if the board wishes to do that, that would be fine with me.
Any comments, anybody? All
Oh,
right, so let me
I
say
would,
that. Go ahead, George.
I would go ahead and do it. That's, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. If it's going to be that short, we'll just keep in the same order.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'd like to start just by providing some background on the refunding. Believe it or not, we started working on this as far back as February. And at various times over the last few months, with all the instability in the financial markets, some weeks it didn't seem like we'd be able to see this come to fruition. But fortunately, things settled down, and I've been speaking with our bond advisor weekly. For this refunding, we looked at certain maturities of bonds issued back in 2012 and 2013 that financed two of our larger projects in town, which included the Center Fire Station and the large, the ESCO, or the Energy Saving Conservation Contract. And the process was a little different for this time for a couple of reasons. Due to the day-to-day volatility in the financial markets and the fact that we're refunding only certain maturities within these bonds that produce savings, we used what's an RFP process and a negotiated purchase agreement for the bonds. The other consideration was that for the 2013 bonds, we did what's called an advance refunding. And this means that we're refunding the bonds before their call date. Federal law changed back in 2017, so municipalities can no longer issue tax-exempt bonds for an advance refunding. With interest rates so low, we were still able to complete this by using taxable bonds for the advance refunding, and it will generate significant, and still gonna, as you'll see, is gonna generate significant savings. I just wanted to explain that as you're reading through the paperwork, if you see some of the securities are saying taxable, I just wanted to explain the reason for that. So I'm
John,
pleased to.
do you want me to open that? Do you want me to share that on the screen?
If you'd like to, you. Sure.
If you find it helpful, that's up to you.
Sure.
Are you looking at this?
Yeah, there's the bond purchase agreement. So I just wanted to explain to the board the reason why some of them on the Series B says subject to federal and Massachusetts taxation. Again, for those that may be watching at home, the town doesn't have to pay taxes on any of this money. It's the bond purchasers that purchase these bonds. The interest they earn that from on the bonds may be subject to federal and state taxation. So I'm pleased to report that the refunding was completed earlier this afternoon on over $10 million of bonds. And the refunding is going to result in a savings of $1,106,546 on future debt service expenses for the town through fiscal year 2033. If we look at these numbers on a present value basis, the savings are $927,829. This is really the highest amount of savings from a refunding that I've ever been involved with during my time as finance director. Last week on April 28th, Standard & Poor's affirmed the town's bond rating at AA+ with a stable outlook. And with so much uncertainty in the world today, our strong bond rating really helped us in this transaction. And I'm sure, as Ken knows, being in the investment world, bond investors are really reluctant right now to purchase anything with a weaker credit rating, just with all the uncertainty going on. Bond counsel provided late this afternoon a bond purchase agreement that I forwarded to the board upon receipt, and also a motion, which I do admit is very lengthy, for the board to consider and vote this evening. I respectfully ask the board vote to approve the bond purchase agreement, which authorizes me as treasurer to sign the bond purchase agreement on behalf of the town. Following tonight's meeting, I'll email the motion to Select Board member Ann Toole and ask her to sign and return to me by email. So thank you for that time.
So John, are you not asking us to read this, or asking?
If you in my opinion, just from meetings of the past, I believe you can, if Selectman Wojcik wishes to just refer to the motion as drafted by bond counsel. I know it's almost 3 pages. So if you,
Right.
if you feel that you might, that it's necessary to read it, I'm not opposed to that, but I admit it's very lengthy. So if if Paul wants to weigh in, I would think if you could make a reference to say as prepared or as voted by bond counsel, and
Are you looking for Paul Cohen or Paul Haverty to weigh in?
I'm sorry, if we had a legal question, Paul Haverty could probably weigh in, but I was thinking, if you describe the motion as prepared by bond counsel, I'll defer the legal opinion to Paul Haverty, but that might save some time as far as reading all this.
Okay, so
is there a question
Pat,
as to
you wanna make-
the motion that you would like me to address?
Yeah, Paul,
well,
I just
think the question, Paul, is just, can we make it as the motion as presented with the
Yes.
3-page?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the refunding of municipal bonds as prepared by bond counsel.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
You want to do a roll call just because of the nature of the vote, just to make sure that it's clear?
Yeah, just 1 second though, because Emily just joined us. Emily, we're just up into the first section of the meeting. John just presented an overview of the bond refinancing we did, and we were at the point where we had a motion to approve as presented John's motion. I'm sorry, John's. I guess it is the motion that he presented. So Pat made it, and we were just about to vote.
Right, so that was
I
it.
just want to make sure you're up to speed.
Yeah,
Do you,
I am. You can hear me, right?
Emily, do you have any questions or comments before we vote?
I don't think so. I'm trying to get this set up, missing some peripherals here because my kids have been using this. So I'm trying to pull everything up. So can I abstain from this vote while I get everything pulled up, and I'll jump in on the next one, if that's okay.
Since Emily's the clerk and is going to have to sign for all of us, I don't think it's a good idea for her to abstain.
Yeah.
Okay, well then, all right. So then, one sec. Let me pull this up.
Okay, while you're pulling that up, I just have a question though. So John, that means that we will not have to sign all these documents individually like we usually have to?
Right. What bond council's been working on is giving all that's been going on with COVID and recognizing that the board is unable to meet in person like you normally do. They're going to send a very abbreviated amount of documents, maybe like 2 or 3 pages that will forward to each select board member, and you may be asked to sign electronically and then return it. All of the bonds have to be signed, but with my signature, but that will save us from having you sign the usual large stack of documents. So one of the things bond counsel is going to do is she's going to incorporate the electronic facsimile of the board signature on as much as she can legally. So you will not, I know normally when we meet and we do a bond refund during our bond issuance, you have a very large stack of documents that we ask you to sign, and fortunately, in this case, we'll be able to eliminate a lot of that or vastly reduce it. So you may be receiving either from myself or from Paul. We'll forward it on to each select board member. Maybe like just from what she explained to me, possibly 2 or 3 documents that you'll be asked to sign electronically.
And then we would have to return the originals or just scan them and send them back, you know?
I'll provide the board with more exact directions as once I receive them. But from what bond counsel had explained to me, she's going to try to have you sign 2 or 3 documents electronically. If
Okay.
by chance those had to be signed physically, then she'll provide like a return, postage paid return envelope, and you could just sign them and drop them in the mail, as they're addressed by our firm.
Thank you.
So the good news is, to summarize, is you won't be asked. It just wasn't practical to try to have each board member sign a large stack of documents, given that we can't gather together at these times. So.
And just one comment to what John had said before. I'd go a little bit even further to what John's comments were. Is the bond markets were an absolute mess over the last 8 weeks. From anybody who was trying to refinance a home loan was put in a queue. You couldn't find anybody willing to buy, sell, move. The Federal Reserve out of the state of New York was dumping billions of dollars a night into the bond markets to try to free things up. So the fact you got this refinanced is a good job.
No, thank you. It was a team effort. Honestly, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we were told that it could not proceed because as Ken described, there were just no buyers out there, and no one wanted to commit to a price and then be burned later on. So we're very happy to see this move forward, and we'll save the town some significant money.
All right, so Emily, what do you think? Do we have a motion?
Yeah.
Oh, we've already done the motion in a second.
Oh, okay. So we have a motion and a second. Emily, are you prepared to vote?
Yes, I'm prepared to vote. I know what's been happening with the bond market.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call. Pat?
Yes.
George?
Yes,
George?
aye.
Virginia?
Yeah,
Aye.
Can you hear me?
Emily?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. All right, with that, then that'll move us to 4th item on the agenda tonight, and we'll turn it over to Dr. Lang.
Yes, thank you, Chairman and members of the board. Before you this evening, similar to what we have presented in the past, seeking your approval to submit an application to the Massachusetts School Building Authority by Wednesday, which is their application deadline for consideration of a future school building project in Chelmsford. This is a very similar application that you've received and reviewed and approved over the last couple of years. We have applied each year to try to get into the pipeline for some future funding to be able to do a school capital project in town in the years to come. And the pool is obviously very challenging It's a competitive process that you have to go through. But one of the steps that you do have to take year after year is actually going through the process and reapplying. The way the MSBA statement of interest process works is every spring they open up a window where you can submit applications. Again, what I'm seeking is your authorization to be able to submit the application this year again on Chelmsford's behalf. The school committee voted at their last meeting to authorize me to submit the statement of interest, so that's what we're looking to do again. And then eventually, at some point, we are looking to be able to work with the MSBA on a school project. So if you recall, a few years back, we had undertaken a comprehensive facilities assessment in town to try to ascertain what the best project to move forward would be. I know most of the board has kind of reviewed this over the last couple of years, so I won't go into it in detail. But this is basically another application for a potential high school project in town, which would allow us to then reutilize some of our existing buildings in town in a one project type process. When we had gone through the facilities assessment process some years back, obviously we have elementary, middle school, and high school needs. I think trying to be realistic of the amount of funding that may be available in the town in the future, the number of projects that we could possibly move forward. If we're able to accomplish a lot of our goals by doing one project, we thought that that had the most success eventually of being approved. So that's why the high school project was attractive to us. If we were able to move forward with some type of a high school project in the years to come, the plan would be to obviously, ideally, construct a new high school, then consolidate our two middle schools into the existing high school now, or the old high school. That is technically the newest building in town, so that our student population grades 5 to 12 would all have relatively new buildings. And then we'd be able to repurpose Parker Middle School as a elementary school to be able to redistrict and rezone the community to deal with some of our space needs at the elementary school level. The McCarthy could then come offline, and we could talk about possibly renovating that entire site to support the middle schools and the high school on project. So the statement of interest we have submitted for the last 3 years, unfortunately, we have not been moved forward. As I mentioned, it's a clean slate every year. Projects get moved out. Your competition is whoever happens to apply that particular year. So we're looking to go through that again this year. I do think, just anticipating some questions, I do think funding is obviously in question, even with the MSBA, as far as how much they'll have available. I really don't know how likely it is that our application would be successful this next year. But what I do think is important that we continually apply and show the town's desire for some point in the future to be able to work on a project with the MSBA. So that's what's here before you this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Ultimately, this is the same vote, just updated with the application for this year. But this is the vote that I would recommend the Board of Selectmen take this evening.
With that, if there's no objection, do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that having convened in an open session on Monday, May 4th, 2020, prior to the closing date, the Board of Selectmen of Chelmsford, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority a statement of interest form dated April 21st, 2020, for Chelmsford High School located at 200 Richardson Road, which describes and explains the following deficiencies and the priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future, including the elimination of existing severe overcrowding, prevention of severe overcrowding expected to result from increased enrollments, replacement, renovation, or modernization of school facility systems, such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating, and ventilation systems, to increase conservation and decrease energy-related costs in the school facility, and replacement of or addition to obsolete buildings in order to provide for a full range of programs consistent with state and approved local requirements. And hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting this statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority is in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the town school district to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
I'll second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Pat?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so let's see, that brings us now to,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
thank you,
Jay.
Dr. Lang.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thanks, Maria.
Thank you.
The next item up on the agenda is Paul Haverty. We have a open meeting law complaint, and Paul is going to address that issue.
And Mr. Chairman, I've prepared a draft response. I don't know if the board has had the chance to review it.
I'm not sure if I can pull that up. Let me just, and I can't. I can't share that, Paul, so.
Okay,
and
that's
it
fine.
just-
But do you want me to run through it, or do you want to just see if the board has questions about any specific provision?
Could you step through it, Paul?
Certainly. Well, starting from the beginning, obviously, I'm going to have to change the date. At the time I prepared the draft letter, I didn't know when the board would be meeting or when would be responding. So my presumption is that I will send this out tomorrow and that it would have a May 5th date. Also in the draft, I had identified the board as the select board. Paul has subsequently informed me that the special legislation for that name change has not yet been approved. So that would need to be changed back to Chelmsford Board of Selectmen, and that's in a couple of spaces. So I won't cover those yet again. I'll start. Dear Mr. Chase, this office represents the town of Chelmsford as town council. We are in receipt of your open meeting law complaint filed on April 21st, 2000 against the Chelmsford Board of Selectmen. Pursuant to the requirements of the open meeting law, the Chelmsford Board of Selectmen met on, and that would be changed to May 4th, 2020, to discuss your complaints. At its meeting, the board determined that the discussion that occurred during its January 27, 2020 executive session relating to the contract of the town manager was not conducted with the intent to invoke the provisions of section 4-7 of the Chelmsford Charter relating to the removal of the town manager. The agenda that was posted for the January 27, 2020 executive session stated that it was for the purpose of strategy with respect to negotiations with the town manager regarding a new employment agreement. As you are aware, the minutes for the January 27, 2020 executive session were recently inadvertently released pursuant to a public record request. You included a copy of the minutes of the January 27, 2020 executive session in your OML complaint. As those minutes indicate, the discussion during the executive session addressed only the issue of the renewal of the town manager's employment agreement, specifically whether the members of the board were inclined to renew the employment agreement. There is no mention within the executive session minutes addressing an intent to invoke the provisions of section 4-7 of the Chelmsford Charter for the removal of the town manager. This is because the only discussion during the executive session was focused solely on the negotiation of a new employment agreement, including whether the agreement should be renewed. As you are aware, the board ultimately chose to defer announcing that it would not renew the contract of the town manager. After further discussions, the board announced an open session on March 5, 2020, that the contract of the town manager would be extended for a one-year period. This offers further evidence that the intent of the board during the January 27, 2020 executive session was not to invoke the provisions of section 4-7 of the town charter to remove the town manager, but instead was limited solely to the issue of the extension of the employment agreement with the town manager. Are there any questions or comments up to this point?
Well, the only question that I had is in the second paragraph. As you are aware, you talk about the minutes and then you included a copy of the minutes. Those were, I don't know if it matters or not for this purpose, but the minutes that were inadvertently released were draft minutes. They had not yet been reviewed
Yes.
and approved.
Would you like me to revise this to indicate that they were draft minutes?
I mean, it's fine with me if the rest of the board wants to do that. I just wanted to make it clarify that those weren't the final minutes.
Yeah, I agree with Virginia. I think it should specify that they were draft minutes.
So that's in 2 sentences.
I've got at least 3 locations here where I'm going to change that. As you are aware, the draft minutes for the January 20, 2020 executive session, you included a copy of the draft minutes of the January 2020 executive session, as those draft minutes indicate.
Yes, I guess it's 3 places.
Yep. And the next paragraph, or the last paragraph, is really intended to address the requirements in the open meeting law that when there is a complaint, that the board should address what mitigative measures it can or will take to address that complaint. So this paragraph states, you requested in your OML complaint that if the board intended to terminate the town manager, it, begin quotation, should as a minimum be compelled to conduct and act on such intentions publicly in accordance with the relevant charter provisions, end quotation. Section 4-7 of the town charter sets forth a process for the removal of the town manager, a process which includes the adoption of a formal resolution of removal, parentheses, requiring a majority vote, end parentheses, followed by a public hearing if requested by the town manager. If no hearing is requested, open parentheses, or after the completion of such hearing, close parentheses, the board may vote to adopt a final resolution of removal, open parentheses, requiring a 4/5 vote of the board. This process must occur as part of an open public meeting. The board affirms that in the event there is an intent to remove the town manager in the future, that the public hearing requirement 4-7 will be fully observed. And then if you have any questions regarding this correspondence, please feel free to contact me. I think that addresses the substance of the complaint. Would you like me to read into the record specifically what the open meeting law complaint stated?
Paul, what was that? You said you'd like to read into what, into the records? You kind of.
I'm asking if you want me to read into the record what exactly Mr. Chase stated in his open meeting law complaint.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Right, so in his complaints, Mr. Chase said, as the elected executive authority of the town, the Chelmsford Board of Selectmen, BOS, has the obligation to act in good faith, transparent in legal manner. If it is determined that the BOS in any way violated the public trust by its January 27, 2020 executive session meeting and subsequent actions, the BOS should immediately remedy such action. If the BOS intent on January 27, 2020 was in fact to terminate the town manager without following the protocols established in the Chelmsford's town charter, then the BOS should, as a minimum, be compelled to conduct and act on such intentions publicly in accordance with the relevant charter provisions. So the intent of the last paragraph of the draft letter is to show that, in fact, the board does have the intent to comply with those provisions if and when it ever intends to follow through in that manner.
I think the letter does a good job of addressing, of answering, of responding to Sam Chase's complaint. So I would, do you need a motion to accept it, to send it to him?
Yes.
I don't know if there's any other discussion before I do a motion.
No, I think he did a good job. I think he did a good job of answering the complaint.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we direct the town council, Paul Haverty, to submit the letter as presented and amended in response to the open meeting law complaint filed by Sam Chase.
Second.
We have a motion. Second. We have a motion and a second.
This should probably be a roll call vote as well.
Yep. So let's start, George.
Aye.
Emily.
Aye.
Virginia.
Aye.
Pat.
Aye.
And I will vote aye.
Is there anything else that you need me for tonight, Mr. Chairman?
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Good night.
And that will, looking at the agenda, I think that brings us to the 6th item, which, Paul, you have something to discuss?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I'm seeking the board's confirmation of a contract award for solid waste disposal. This would be the renewal and extension of the contract with Covanta Haverhill Associates for a solid waste disposal effective July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2024. So it's a 3-year extension. Just to remind the board of those watching the meeting, the town of Chelmsford disposed of its solid waste at a trash to energy facility in Haverhill. We're part of a coalition with 6 other communities, including the towns of Tewksbury, Westford, and so forth, in which we join together and negotiate contracts for solid waste disposal. As we discussed in recent past at board meetings, the solid waste and recycling markets are in a very difficult position because of limited capacity. The initial foray a few years ago was on the recycling, in which China no longer accepted the quantity of recyclable materials that it did, and it drove up the recycling disposal market to basically the same price now as solid waste disposal. Well, now communities across Massachusetts, as well as private industries in Massachusetts and across the country, are running into solid waste disposal cost increases because of the limited facilities that will take solid waste disposal. In the New England region, there are not many new landfills being re-permitted because of environmental concerns and community opposition. Again, they aren't building any new waste to energy or trash to energy plants because the same concerns out there. And obviously, up until 2 months ago, the economy was very healthy with a lot of disposal from commercial and municipal and other waste generators. So again, we've gone out to bid, we've negotiated the market, and we've come back with the best deal for Chelmsford and for the community towns. Unfortunately, it's a significant price increase. It's a 20% price increase because of the declining opportunities to dispose of. And we explored areas such as trash disposal by rail, in which you could move by either rail or trucking to disposal facilities in Ohio or even in the Carolinas. But the most cost-effective solution was to remain with our contract. Again, people are familiar in the local area. The 2 major facilities are one's in Haverhill, which is the Covanta one, and then you get the Wheelabrator facility right next door in North Andover. So just to put it in context, currently we generate solid waste tipping at $73.04 per ton for the fiscal year that we're in right now, that will obviously finish on June 30th. So that's the price right now. It's adjusted by inflation marker for the final year. So you'll probably be at around $74.50 beginning on July 1st. This contract, again, and this is the market that's out there in other communities' contracts, the tipping fee as of July 1, 2021 will be $90 per ton. That increases the following fiscal year to $93.60. And then by fiscal year 24, it's $97.34. So we obviously have seen this coming. We've prepared it. We finalized the language, and we're now in the process of renewal. What this really means is that in fiscal year 2022, which would be 14 months from now, assuming the same level of tonnage disposal, we'll have to budget an additional $200,000 for solid waste disposal costs at that time. So that's where we are. And again, I'd ask your approval, not because we're excited about this contract, but because it's the most effective and cost-effective solution for the town of Chelmsford.
How did so the $90 is a 20% increase from where we are now. How do the year 2 and 3 increments compare with our previous contracts in terms of the percentage increase?
Well, basically what we've asked for is during this whole process, we asked for a period, a contract period. And so when we approached Wheelbrader and others, we said, look, the communities want a 3-year period for the contract. Give us prices for the 3 years. And so this is the price that they offered for each of those 3 years. And so.
So let me try my question again, because I think I misled you. Is our previous contract a 3-year contract?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so all I'm asking is from year 1 to year 2, year 2 to year 3, the percentage increases that we're having, that we see in the proposed contract, is that comparable to how the previous contract incremented
Yeah.
year over year?
It was an escalating fee. And we did actually ask for a 5-year contract, and actually the prices in 5 years were less favorable. So we could have gone to 5 because we have that authority under our charter. The 3 years was effective. The increases are significant. You're going from $90 to $33, which is not immaterial, but it was the best price that we could obtain. Again, we asked for 5, we asked for 3, we even asked for blending rates and so forth in terms of what if we extended our current contract. And at the end of the day, after a series of meetings and conference calls, this was deemed as the best price. So yes, it has gone up a few dollars per ton is a short answer to your question.
Okay, thank you.
Nobody's excited.
Paul, George,
Yes,
are we still getting that extra truck now and then from our contractor? Because I had a couple of calls tonight. People hadn't gotten their trash picked up by like 5:30, 6 o'clock or something. And
this is for the disposal only. We have a separate contract for the collection for solid waste, and then we have a separate one for the collection of recyclable materials. How
Right.
COVID plays into this is that's where we tip of it and dispose of the materials. We have language in the contract about lines. That's where often run into a problem.
Right.
They show up with a full truck and then they're waiting 2 hours to dispose of the material in the truck, which then slows the collection up from the collectors from getting back into town.
Right.
Again, we have that language of provisions. The problem, it does spark up time to time, particularly around the holidays, or if they run into a situation now where they may have a shortage of workers due to illness. But everyone's trying to do the best that they can. They do have the site monitored by camera, so you can actually see the lines of what's taking place
Right.
out there.
I understand. I was wondering if that was still the problem, you know what I mean? And especially with so many more people home, I'm sure there's an increase in tonnage every week too,
Yeah.
I was just curious. Thank you.
Well, I don't know if you missed the beginning of this question. He just asked if we had that extra truck, I guess, that we were assigned on the trash pickups.
But again, that's a collector. That wouldn't be the tipping facility.
But right. You know if we still have it?
I don't know. I'll have to look in to see whether there's an extra truck coming around. That was the reason that they asked not to pick up the bulk waste, was because they're trying to get the route done as quick as they can, and the extra tonnage is slowing them down and filling the trucks to make them go out sooner. But I'd have to check.
Okay.
Thank you.
Paul, it's Emily. Is the extra fees based on the current increase due to people staying at home and producing more trash?
No, these negotiations, discussions took place over the last 6 months. And so that was well before what was taking place now. In fact, now the lines may be less because you're getting very little commercial and private tonnage disposed of at this point. But no, this is not a result of the pandemic. This was a result of the lack of alternatives to dispose of solid waste as it declines over time, and the lack of any new facilities or the lack of additional recycling or waste reduction in the future. And I think you're going to see more of that. The state's updating their solid waste ban. For example, one of the things we're going to see in the next year is they're no longer going to allow you to dispose of mattresses. They're going to mandate that you recycle mattresses, which right now is not a mandate. So I think those are some of the things you're going to see in the upcoming years.
Paul, how does someone recycle a mattress?
Oh,
Never heard of that.
there's a organization out of Lowell, UTEC. They basically recycle the material inside the mattress whether it's metal or the other material inside of a mattress. So right now the state is phasing in an ultimate ban. We understand that in about 14 months you will no longer be allowed to throw a mattress into the solid waste stream. It would have to be recycled, just like white goods or other items.
Got it. All right, thank you.
Is there any plan to figure out some sort of composting program? Can we get together with NIMCOG or any other area towns to figure out how to do composting at a larger scale so that we can get some of our solid waste out of the stream?
Yeah, I have had discussions with Melissa Joyce, our recycling coordinator, on that. The problem becomes the collection cost. It's not that we don't want to, it's that it's the issue of what is the cost to collect composting from every residential property in the community. Right now, the state has mandated that restaurants do composting, but they've not extended that requirement to residential properties because of the cost consideration. So it is something we're looking at. I know she'll be working with the recycling committee to further explore it, but right now it hasn't been a financially viable alternative for Chelmsford or communities like us or around us for that reason. But it is something that is under consideration.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, make a motion that we approve the town manager's contract extension to Covanta Haverhill Associates for solid waste disposal as presented.
Second.
So a motion, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 I'll vote aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. And then the last item I have is I invited Sean Shanahan to join this call this afternoon, just to give you the latest up-to-date information regarding the UMass Lowell West Campus demolition and disposal of hazardous materials at that site. So if you could allow Sean to join in, we should be all set.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see everybody online. Kind of funny, but so Thursday afternoon, we got a call from over to the West Campus in reference to some noises that they had heard. After investigating, we realized that there was a major roof collapse. The portion of the roof that collapsed left the land very, very, very in a very precarious position. Also left the D side of the building in a situation where it was about 7.5 feet out of plumb. We felt it better at that time to immediately tear the building down. There's a lot of people who have been known to walk dogs from the neighboring community up there. And my fear was an innocent bystander getting hurt. So we tore that building down and ended approximately 2:30 in the evening, actually 2:30 Friday morning. And the building is down, covered, and we're awaiting a non-traditional work plan from the DEP to remove the debris now.
So Sean, what will happen with the other buildings that are there? There's still what, 3 remaining?
So there's 3 remaining. I have a Zoom meeting later this week with the people involved. We will work on a plan to demolish 2 of the buildings that are there. We're looking at rehabbing one of the buildings that is there, the most recently used building, and ironically, the day before the collapse of the roof, they actually received the abatement plan. So that abatement plan is in place now, and we will be able to, in a fairly short order, remediate those buildings.
So in February, you and Paul presented a letter dated February 12th
Yep.
to the property owner with the demolition order. And there was a fine schedule in that letter, $1,000 per day per violation, commencing 30 days from the delivery of that notice. Have we been collecting that fine?
So as far as the fines go and the fines go into process, they immediately contracted a hazardous waste and abatement company. That process, especially with what we're going through now, has been in a delayed state, and why it just showed up last week. But they immediately started that process. Part of that demolition process is to obtain the proper mitigation of the hazardous material. No building can be pulled down unless that plan is in place. And that plan was in process. So I will state that as far as the order goes, the order has been followed, and they, just because it doesn't meet the exact timeline, there are circumstances out there that as far as COVID and having the abatement company do their assessment while accessing the building on a very minimal basis because of the nature of the structures.
Sean, excuse me, Virginia, did I interrupt you? You all done,
Go ahead.
Virginia? Or?
Go ahead, George.
I just wanted to ask if I apologize, Virginia. I just wanted to ask about liability. Is there sufficient liability insurance up there now? And does the town have any liability? Say, for example, there was somebody in that building, or some kids, in we neighborhood down there. I mean, they've been doing it for years. So just say hypothetically, God forbid, there was a kid in there and he didn't come out. He didn't come out, and he passed on. Does the town have any liability there at all, or are they covered sufficiently so that eventually we could get a development in there and
So
one way or the other,
The long and the short of that is our demolition order that we issued in February, and Paul Haverty may be able to answer to the fine legal point, but that releases us and puts the owners on notice, and they take the onus of the responsibility. We've done our due diligence as far as notifications. We've properly marked the buildings. We've asked for all the proper things to be done to maintain that.
and you're
again, go ahead, George.
you're enforcing the document. In other words, by doing that, that takes us off the hook. Is that what you're saying, basically?
The long and short of it, yes, it takes us off the hook, and it puts the onus on them. The responsibility for maintaining the property is absolutely on them. The cost of demolition is absolutely on them, and the cost of any demolition moving forward, it will absolutely be on them. And we just had to make that choice on the spot, and I think Manager Cohen can tell you that it was a pretty immediate decision that needed to be made, and we did that, and we had a demo company on site within the hour. So it's where we can't monitor that site. I'm sorry, George.
Oh, I said the response was good that night. There's no question about it.
Yeah, I think at the time it was just where we can't physically see who is on that site every minute. It's not a street side location. We didn't want to take the chance of again, like you said, finding someone there in a state that we didn't want to see them in.
Right.
So I have just a follow-up question. And I understand hindsight is easier than foresight, but almost 3 months went by since the initial order before the roof collapsed and we acted. So are these abatement companies and, rodent mitigation companies, are they not on the essential workers list, or are you saying they're all shut down?
No, they are on the essential workers list. Again, it's access to the buildings, them coming up with a plan that was safe for them as a company to come up with a proper plan to mitigate the hazardous material in there. It's not just an easy thing. We have some buildings over there with floors missing, with some definite structural issues that can cause harm to anybody walking in there, which is why the red X's are up there from the fire department, which means, do not enter unless you're really going in there to protect life and limb. So they as well have the same problem with getting in there, and they use some electronic methods and some robotic methods of testing and getting some test material from those places to not put human life in danger. And I give them some accolades on that because, this is all new to us, just like Zoom meetings. It's a new process for us to not be there taking physical samples. So they actually sent some robotic devices in there to retrieve materials to test. So yes, it does take longer, but they were responsive and I feel acting within a timely manner. It's just a different way of doing things.
So was the rodent, before you had to take this building down on the spot, was the rodent mitigation already completed?
So rodent mitigation has been active. Rodent mitigation has been active since day one of that notice.
Okay.
And I was on site the entire time during a demolition and was very cognizant of any type of rodent activity. And it's lacking a food source out there. We don't have a food source. So with the mitigation, lack of food source, lack of water, we're in a good space out there.
Is there any concern that the other buildings in that area are in a similar state where they could collapse at any point? And should we be attempting to speed up the demolition of those buildings?
So that's my concern exactly, is the buildings are in very similar shape. There's one building that is salvageable. However, the other buildings are in dire need of demolition. As I said, I will be having a meeting later this week. The demo company who is out there to do the demolition, with my fingers crossed that they will engage to have those buildings torn down way sooner than later. With that hazardous abatement plan in place and the non-traditional work plan in place for the removal of what we did tear down, it gives us that leg forward, and it gives us that sort of forward roll to move forward with real quick. And DEP is now currently activated on the site, so you will see a site number go up and all the necessary things to make that site look active.
So those buildings are made of bricks. Are those bricks salvageable and recyclable, reusable, or is it all just going into a fill somewhere?
So they are. They're salvageable and they're recyclable. It all depends on where that company brings them and what the mitigation specialists say. Back in the days when those buildings were built, there was a lot of asbestos just in the grout and just in everything that surrounds that brick. So necessarily the brick isn't made of anything that's hazardous to us, but everything that's holds that together may be hazardous. So depending on where they decide to bring it and whether they decide to recycle it or not, there's chipping companies that may chip it up and it may become part of a walkway somewhere or something else. But there are definite methods. I'm not saying that's the method that they will choose, but it's possible.
Yeah, back in the day when they put those buildings up, the mortar had asbestos in it, I think is what you're looking for there, Sean. So that's actually very common back then, that the mortar has
Correct.
the asbestos. Where the brick may be clean, the mortar may not. All right.
John,
Anybody else?
you mentioned, yeah, excuse me. They're talking about restoring the final building. Is that one of the buildings?
Yeah, so the last building that was used, I guess, what Chelmsford folklore says as a reform school or whatever. That's the building that they are trying to salvage and sort of make the centerpiece of the project. Whether it be a community center or whatever they decide to use it as. I've heard it thrown out as apartments, community center, things like that. But yes, they are looking at trying to save that.
Yeah, that was my concern. If they're looking to save it, they must have some type of plan. You know what I mean? They must be throwing different plans around. But
Yeah, I think
just
with
curious.
this, I think this was a dire warning to them that, you know, we're playing with some serious stuff here. That, you know, it's not just buildings off on the side, and the movement in the conversations I've had with them in the last day and a half have been very positive and very quick moving. So I think we got the right legs under us now to get that going.
Thank you.
So Paul, if they're talking about apartments and community centers, that would be something other than the single family zoning that's there now, or are there some kind of discussions going on about the development of that property?
We have not,
Yeah,
we've not been presented with a plan. Therefore, there has been no discussion at the planning board level, and nothing has been presented to the Board of Appeals either. So we've heard lots of discussions. I've been in discussions with David Hedison. He hasn't given me an update in months. You know, so I don't have an active plan to even comment on. And again, we're awaiting an action from the property owner. They either have to come to town meeting for a rezoning, or the other way to do it would be go to the Board of Appeals under an alternative route, such as a friendly 40B or something. But thus far, nothing has been filed with either land use board. But it's got to go forward before town meeting. If it goes there, it's got to go to the planning board for its recommendation. But again, nothing has been filed, and nothing has been submitted to the Board of Appeals, and nothing has come into my office. I have no draft plans. And in speaking to Evan, he doesn't have anything either. So again, we've not seen a concrete proposal that identifies. We hear things in discussion just like you may about what potentially is out there for a housing development, but nothing has been presented that can be actively considered at this point in time.
I just want to remind everybody quickly too, this is not an agenda item. When we've started to really go into this a little bit deeper than, I think Paulie just asked for a quick update. So I don't know if there's an issue there with us getting this far into it with these questions, but.
Well, if we think it warrants further discussion, then we should put it on as an agenda item for the next meeting.
And I can certainly prepare an item for your next meeting if needed. Just have Paul let me know, and that's what we can do.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Hey, he's gone. Thanks. I noticed we don't have any type of announcements or liaison reports on the agenda. So with that,
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
we have a motion, a second, all in favor.
Aye.
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 Pat?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe.